So I'm going to start off with Marie. And it's wonderful that you work with such a range of audiences. But I just wanted to ask, do you experience any challenges or barriers working with the communities that you do work with?
Yeah, so the project is really, really new, and we haven't actually physically done anything with the communities as part of the project yet. But being Romany myself and understanding that, you know, a large proportion of my own extended family haven't completed formal education. So there are barriers with regards to actually being able to understand concepts that we're possibly trying to deal with. But also there are barriers such as gaining trust. I think if this wasn't being led by a member of one of the communities, we would not be able to engage in the ways that we'd like to. The aim of this project at the end of it is not just to engage through stores. We wish to engage directly with communities, maybe go to travellers' sites or to venues that they would be more comfortable in. And that's something that you can't really do unless you have a significant amount of trust that's been built up. And that's why through networking on Twitter and working with, striking up relationships with some of the organisations that we have met solely through Twitter, we've been able to engage in dialogue that I think will be beneficial and useful as this progresses. And also digital exclusion. There's a really difficult problem with digital exclusion, especially if you're roadside or travelling, not having a broadband connection to do both.
Fantastic. I mean, you've just again reiterated the fact that much of public engagement is about that collaboration with the communities. It is that dialogue. It's not a one-way process at all. So fantastic work. I'm going to move on to Lucy now, and ask you about about Kaplunk really. You did say that I guess initially you had brought it out for younger audiences, but it's interesting to see that the adults were also intrigued and wanted to get involved and wanted to have those conversations. So I was wondering, what would your top tips be for engaging and working with the audiences that you've discussed?
It's adapting the tool to who you're talking to, I suppose. I haven't met an adult yet that doesn't like a game of giant Kaplunk, actually. So I suppose it's then adapting the kind of conversations you're having to listen to what they're saying to you while you're imparting a piece of information, and then hearing back their experiences and actually letting the conversation flow from there. So it really is knowing your audience, isn't it? I mean, that's the key to all kinds of engagement. I think it's what's been fascinating today, hearing my fellow speakers, is the kind of one of the things that came out in Nicholas's talk was, this tactile element. And I can identify with so many parts of what he's saying about, whether he's using peppercorns or I'm using grapes, and the whole kind of, picking objects up and measuring and weighing them up in your hands and actually being able to connect with things is so important, isn't it?
Completely. And completely, it is about adapting the messages and what you want to get across to people. And kind of putting the audiences first, really, as well. I think that's the important thing here.
But I think this other thing about I mentioned people that maybe aren't, the junk punk doesn't necessarily suit everybody. It's a little bit in your face for some people, and so actually your audiences might not want that kind of experience. They might want something that's more ponderous and solo and self-directed. And I think it's being ready to offer that alongside as well, and adapting that for people. As Nick said, what works for one person doesn't work for others. Sorry, I keep quoting you, so.
That's perfect. I think it isn't one size fits all completely. Yeah, completely. Thank you, Lucy. We'll move over to Nick now and talk a bit more about Tactile Universe. Have you found that people without vision impairments also enjoy using the tactile images, for example?
Yeah, so we've definitely found we've taken them to lots of science fairs, to music festivals, to other things like that. Whenever we run our workshops at schools, we try to involve the whole class. So usually there'll be one vision impaired student, but the rest of the class will be made up of students without a vision impairment. And we are finding, I think people just like having something in their hands, right? It engages people more keeps them occupied while you're talking to them or showing them pictures. Or I think there's a lot to be said about multisensory engagement. If you can engage people with more than one sense, you're more likely to hold their attention, you're more likely to get information across. We've also had people tell us that they can feel things in the tactile images that they can't see as well. So I think there are some definite advantages there as well.
That's fantastic. I think you also mentioned something about the code for Tactile Universe and how it could be applied to other areas, for example, to produce those tactile objects. I can envision, like, for example, using this for cells, for instance, and like visualizing organelles in cells, for instance.
Yeah, I think that would work really, really well. So basically any 2D image. So if you've got a slide image or something like that, you could definitely turn that into a tactile model as well. The thing you've got to be a little bit careful with is because you're modeling the light and the dark, it has to mean something. So in a galaxy, you're looking at if something's brighter, there's normally more stuff there, or there's less stuff there. So there's sort of a direct correlation. If you're dealing with an image without any shadow, then you're probably okay, because it'll still be something meaningful to touch. So, yeah, but no, definitely some applications to biology, I think.
Fantastic, that's brilliant. Well, I think we've come to the end of this session. So I'm going to just thank all of our speakers today, Lucy, Nick, and Marie, for their time and their expertise this afternoon. And yeah, it's amazing work that you've been reaching out to such a variety of different audiences with literally activities that make you do think and break boundaries. Brilliant, thank you.